Stop right there. That fitting area is for actual customers, not people playing dress-up. Guard Evan Kroll didn't lower his voice. He projected it, as if the velvet rope in front of the designer fitting rooms was a stage and Donovan Price was the opening act. Shoppers nearby paused mid-step. A silver handbag slipped from someone's hand and hit the marble with a dull thud. "I have a scheduled fitting," Donovan said. Steady posture, suit bag in one hand, appointment slip in the other. His tone was calm, too calm for the humiliation being forced upon him. Kroll folded his arms, smirking. "Sure you do. Maybe tell me who let you in, because none of my staff would approve that." He reached out, blocking Donovan with his forearm. The metallic glint of his LP 3712 badge flashed beneath the lights. Donovan held up the printed confirmation. "Taylor Room 4, 505. My name is on file." Kroll didn't even glance at it. He addressed the room instead. "We've had a spike in people coming in to take photos and pretend they're shopping luxury. Corporate told us to clamp down." The store's background music faded into silence. Someone near the entrance started filming. Another whispered, "Is he serious right now?" "I'm entering for my appointment," Donovan repeated, still composed. "If there is a procedural issue, state it clearly." Kroll leaned in, voice dropping just enough to feel threatening. "The issue is, you don't walk into my fitting rooms unless I say so. Step back, or you'll be removed." Without waiting for a response, he reached for Donovan's arm. Phones lifted higher. "I am not resisting," Donovan said clearly for every microphone in range. "But you are making physical contact without establishing cause. State your authority for detainment." Kroll's grip tightened. A ripple passed through the crowd. The velvet rope swayed. And in that single moment, everyone watching knew this was no misunderstanding. Kroll yanked Donovan forward, hard enough that his suit bag swung out and hit the marble floor with a slap. Gasps rippled through the store. One shopper clapped a hand over her mouth. Another raised her phone higher, live stream already gaining comments. "You're done playing games," Kroll barked. "Empty your pockets right now. This area's restricted to paying clients." Donovan straightened calmly, refusing to engage physically. "You have made a public accusation. Specify the theft or policy violation you are enforcing." "Oh, I'll specify it," Kroll said, loud enough for the entire floor to hear. "Tag switching and potential concealment. People like you try this every week." A woman by the shoe display said out loud, "He literally showed you a ticket." Kroll ignored her and pressed the side button on his radio. "LP 3712, code black, priority response." Two things happened at once. The store DJ cut the music, and 3 phones began filming in ultra-wide mode. Donovan's voice was steady. "Code black is not an official detainment classification. It is internal slang. Document that. You are establishing discriminatory intent on record." "Stop resisting," Kroll snapped, though Donovan was standing perfectly still. Kroll jerked Donovan's arm upward, twisting his shoulder. The motion elicited a sharp intake of breath from the nearby crowd. Someone shouted, "He's not resisting! We're recording you!" "I have requested private resolution consistent with company policy," Donovan said. "You are violating Section 5.9 governing customer interactions." Kroll smirked at the cameras. "Policy doesn't apply when we suspect fraud." A burst of notifications echoed from phones around the room. The live stream counter passed 800 viewers. Kroll stepped behind Donovan as if preparing to cuff him. Then, for the first time, Donovan raised his voice, not in anger, but in unmistakable legal command. "You are detaining me unlawfully. Identify yourself for the record. Full name and badge number before you proceed." Kroll hesitated. That single hesitation sent a visible ripple through the crowd, proof that he had just crossed a line he could no longer defend. Kroll positioned himself behind Donovan as if preparing to forcibly restrain him. 2 more guards approached, forming a barrier between Donovan and the watching shoppers. Phones were everywhere now, held high, pointed directly at him. Donovan didn't resist. Instead, he lifted his voice so every recording device caught every word. "If you're recording, do not stop," he said, clear and unwavering. "Send the footage to record@rightsactionfirm.com. Document everything. This is a public rights violation under active detainment." Someone in the crowd repeated the email aloud as they typed. Another whispered, "He knows the law. Keep filming." Kroll scoffed. "You really think people care?" Donovan's eyes never left the cameras. "If this has happened to you, or someone you love, your video may be the reason this ends today. Do not stay silent." A shopper called out, "I'm sending it right now." Kroll signaled for handcuffs. Music was gone. The store was silent. And in that silence, Donovan's words traveled through every camera lens, turning witnesses into participants and a moment into a movement. The glass doors of Brixton and Hale parted with a hydraulic whisper as Donovan stepped inside, suit bag over his shoulder. Rain glistened across his shoulders in flecks, the last traces of an Atlanta drizzle. He glanced at his phone, 4:42 p.m., right on time. The fitting confirmation email glowed on his screen. Appointment confirmed. Taylor Room 4. Final fitting. Custom suit pickup for Maya Price, RN. Pinning ceremony scheduled. Time, 5:05 p.m. His phone buzzed again. "Maya, sister. Did you make it? Don't crease the suit. I already know you will." Donovan, voice low, amused. "I'm here. Focus on your speech. Tonight is yours." He paused at the escalator, watching the holiday decor shimmer in soft gold lighting. Everything in this moment was ordinary, predictable, peaceful, the kind of peace most people take for granted. He adjusted his cuff. The suit bag held more than fabric. It held legacy. This wasn't just a fitting. It was a promise kept to his sister, to their late mother, to every sacrifice made to bring them to this moment. Then, he noticed it. 2 loss prevention guards near the fragrance counter, scanning the entrance. Their eyes lingered on him 2 beats longer than anyone else. Donovan exhaled slowly. This was a familiar pattern. But today, he wasn't here for a fight. He was here for family. And nothing, not even the subtle hum of profiling already in the air, was going to pull him off that path. Donovan stepped onto the escalator, suit bag resting against his arm as the soft glow of designer lights shone across his reflection in the chrome railing. His phone buzzed again, this time not from his sister. Email. Subject. Trogranty. Outstanding work. From Clerk of Fulton County Superior Court. He tapped it open. The court order appeared in bold, signed just 37 minutes earlier. Emergency Temporary Restraining Order. Case number 2023 CV35112. Price v. Kingman Development. Granted. Immediate enforcement authorized. Another notification appeared on screen, this one a voicemail from his assistant. Voicemail, transcribed. "Donovan, the Attorney General's office called. They're requesting you as lead counsel if this goes class action." They said your name, specifically, at the top of his screen. His state bar ID glowed beneath his name, GA942118. He closed the email, sliding the phone into his jacket with quiet precision. There was no smile, no hint of arrogance. He didn't carry his victories like medals, he carried them like tools. A reflection passed in the mirrored display case. A young employee straightened his tie as Donovan walked by, eyes widening in silent recognition. People knew who he was. Institutions knew what he could do. But standing there in the softness of retail lighting, Donovan Price looked like just another customer, a man in a suit, a brother fulfilling a promise. And that's exactly how he intended it to stay. For now. The elevator chimed softly as it opened to the designer level. Donovan stepped out, eyes landing on the "Private Fittings, by appointment only" sign just ahead. His phone buzzed again. "Maya," voice memo, soft and shaky. "Don, I still can't believe this is happening. I keep seeing Mom in my head. I wish she was here to see me walk that stage." Donovan paused in the hallway, shutting his eyes for just a breath. Donovan, whispered reply. She is here, Maya. Every step you take tonight has her hand in it. He slipped his hand into his jacket and felt the light weight of the jewelry envelope. Inside, the gold bracelet their mother wore on her final day. The clasp had been broken for years. Tonight, it would be whole again. Narration flowed through memory like a silent current. Their mother laughing in a hospital bed, her voice telling him, "Protect her future. Make sure they never dim her light." This wasn't just a fitting. It was the final stitch in a promise sewn years ago. Every detail mattered. How Maya walked into that ceremony, how she held herself, how the world saw her. Donovan adjusted his shoulders. Tonight wasn't about him winning a case. It was about his sister stepping into her calling, with dignity no one could question. He took a step toward the fitting area. Donovan passed a mirrored column and paused just long enough to adjust his collar. His reflection was calm, composed, exactly as he trained himself to be in court. But as he reached into his jacket to ensure his appointment slip was ready, another item brushed against his fingertips. A folded legal document. He pulled it out briefly. The header was unmistakable. In the Superior Court of Fulton County, emergency motion, immediate injunctive relief. Plaintiff, Donovan Price, Esquire. Defendants, Sentinel Atlas LLC et al. Pre-filled, signed, ready to file. He had drafted it weeks ago, not because he expected a fight today, but because he understood a fundamental truth. Justice is not reactive. It is prepared. His phone buzzed again. Text, Taylor Department. Security has begun checking entry to fitting rooms. Please proceed directly when you arrive. Do not wait in common areas. Donovan slipped the motion back into his jacket right behind his state bar identification card. Only a corner of it was visible now, just enough for the camera to catch later when everything fell apart. He took a steadying breath, not as a man entering a confrontation, but as a man walking into destiny he had already legally prepared to win. With a gentle push, he moved past the final display rack toward the velvet rope, unaware that the moment he crossed it, everything would change. At 14 years old, Donovan stood beside his father in a boutique that smelled of cedarwood and cold judgment. It was the nicest store in the neighboring suburb. Polished brass fixtures, spotless mirrors, suits lined with price tags that looked more like down payments. They weren't rich. But his father, a church deacon and high school teacher, had saved for this one moment. A single silk tie for Donovan's graduation recital. The clerk blocked their path before they even reached the display. "Store policy," she said sharply. "High-value items are only shown upon proof of purchase intent." His father smiled gently. "We intend to buy. My son has a performance tonight." The clerk didn't move. Instead, she glanced at a security guard. He stepped forward, planting himself directly in front of Donovan. "Empty your pockets," the guard ordered. Donovan froze. "We didn't take anything." The guard's hand hovered near his holster, not a gun, just a baton, but the threat was the same. The implication was ancient. His father's shoulders sagged, but his voice remained soft. "We'll leave," he said. "This isn't worth our dignity." "No!" the guard said. "Pockets first." Right there in front of a ring of silent onlookers, Donovan watched his father turn his pockets inside out. Keys, a folded church bulletin, a $5 bill. Humiliation in its purest form wasn't loud. It was clinical, administered with a smile that said, "We already decided who you are." Narration pulled through Donovan's chest like wire. That was the moment dignity became conditional, not on truth, but on permission. He didn't speak on the drive home. His father tried, but the words couldn't survive the weight of that silence. Donovan stared out the window at passing storefronts and streetlights and made a vow with no witnesses but God and glass. "This will never happen to us again, or anyone else. Not if I can stop it." Years later, Donovan sat in a cramped dorm lounge, textbooks sprawled across the table, the glow of a muted television flickering across his face. A news segment played silently. Young black man wrongfully detained in retail store. Dies after confrontation escalates. The headline hung in the air like a sentence. He pressed unmute. A grieving mother stood at a podium, voice trembling. They thought he was stealing. He was buying a suit for his first job interview. The camera cut to shaken witnesses. No charges filed. No apology issued. That night, Donovan walked into his professor's office, a man known for taking on impossible civil rights cases. Professor Langford, looking up from case files. "You're supposed to be on break. Something on your mind?" Donovan, "I want to learn how to dismantle this. Not just argue it, not just win a case, but change the rules they use." Langford studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Professor, most people wait for injustice to find them. You're walking toward it. That's the difference between outrage and purpose." Narration carries the turn. Donovan didn't become a lawyer to earn status or money. He became one out of necessity, because every courtroom he entered was another door slammed on his father's memory, another chance to rewrite the rules used to humiliate without consequence. His first civil case, years later, wasn't a headline. It was a quiet settlement against a small retailer who detained a teenage honor student without cause. But when the judge read the ruling, Donovan saw it, not in the verdict, but in the eyes of the parents seated behind their son. Relief. Validation. Freedom from shame. That's when he knew. Winning wasn't about victory. It was about dignity restored. And dignity restored was a kind of justice that echoed far beyond one person. Kroll's radio crackled as Donovan stood motionless, eyes steady, every camera in the room catching every twitch of the guard's jaw. Radio dispatch. Unit LP 4140 responding. Location confirmed. A female guard, Marla Pike, rounded the corner in quick strides. Her badge flashed as she arrived beside Kroll, already tightening the black tactical gloves on her hands. Marla, low to Kroll. "This the one matching the fraud alert?" Kroll, loud enough for the crowd. "Yeah. Tried to access the designer fittings without authorization. Possible concealment." Her eyes flicked to Donovan's suit bag on the floor, then to the crowd of shoppers watching, phones up. She made no attempt to de-escalate. Marla. "We may need a full bag search." Donovan, calm, projecting for recordings. "I have presented appointment credentials. Under your own policy, any further detainment requires managerial approval and privacy. State your compliance with Section 12.4 of Customer Rights." Kroll didn't even look at him. He kept his eyes on the bystanders. Kroll, to the crowd. "For your own safety, stay back. We have a potential situation," a shopper shouted. "He didn't do anything. You're profiling him." The live stream chat was already exploding with comments. "Call the news. Store security going crazy. He's literally complying." Narration threads under the tension. The store's atmosphere shifted. This was no longer a misunderstanding. It was a show of force. Kroll wasn't just detaining Donovan. He was performing his authority, staking his power in the court of public attention. Marla stepped forward, blocking the path as the assistant manager tried to intervene. Manager, softly. "Evan, we should move this to the—" Marla, cutting him off. "Management doesn't override active loss prevention protocols." The crowd murmured. A line had been crossed, and everyone watching knew it. Kroll stepped forward again, his tone shifting from public performance to tactical control. Kroll. "Place your hands on your head. We're conducting a search." Donovan, level. "This is a public area." Store policy mandates private resolution rooms for any search. Section 5.9. You are knowingly violating your own corporate procedure. Marla, to Donovan. "Policy changes when we identify active shrink threats." Donovan. "Identify the threat. State it with specificity." Marla didn't answer. She reached for the suit bag on the floor. A woman filming moved closer. "He carried that bag in here." I saw the tag. "He brought it with him. Kroll grabbed Donovan's wrist. Kroll, announcing loudly to the cameras, "Subject is attempting to conceal contents. He's interfering with a legitimate search." Donovan stayed perfectly still. Donovan, "I am refusing unlawful public search, not cooperating with concealment." "If a lawful request is made in a private setting with a manager present, I will comply." Kroll, mocking, "That's not how this works." Narration tightens. He knew exactly what he was doing. Public searches weren't just about finding items. They were a spectacle of dominance, a message to every watching eye about who belonged and who didn't. Marla to Kroll, "We can detain under probable suspicion." Donovan, clear, controlled, "State your probable cause for detainment for the recording." Kroll didn't answer. Instead, he jerked Donovan's arm upward again. A collective groan rippled through the crowd. Bystander, "He said he would comply privately. Are you even listening?" Donovan, "Your refusal to relocate confirms this isn't loss prevention." It's intimidation. Marla reached for the radio. Marla, "LP unit to all. Upgrading status to active detainment. Lock the fitting room access." Narration lands on the beat. Doors in the distance slid shut with a soft mechanical click. This was no longer an encounter. It was an escalation by design. Marla crouched smoothly, reaching into the outer pocket of Donovan's jacket with a swift motion. Donovan, firm, "I do not consent to search. You are performing a public seizure without lawful cause." Kroll, to the crowd, "Refusal noted. We have probable concealment. Watch this closely." He pulled his hand back into view, now holding a small adhesive price tag between two fingers, the kind used on high-end merchandise. The crowd gasped. Marla, performative shock, "Unpaid tag located on subject." Confirmed. Donovan, voice rising, not in panic, but clarity, "That tag did not originate from my person. State when you allege it entered my possession." Kroll, "It was on you just now in plain view." A shopper stepped forward, camera trembling in hand. Shopper, "That's not true. I was recording. He never touched that pocket." Narration sharpens the moment. It was a script Donovan had seen before. Manufacture suspicion, produce false evidence, turn humiliation into justification. Donovan, "Check RFID logs. No alarm triggered on entry. Produce the data. Do it now." On camera Marla, ignoring him. "Subject is now under full detainment. Possible felony attempt." Another shopper yelled, "Felony for a sticker? Are you serious?" Kroll into radio, "Notify APD. Tell them we have theft in progress. Subject is hostile." Donovan locked eyes with him. Donovan, "With this act, you've initiated false reporting. You are on record. That sticker will be Exhibit A in the injunction you just triggered." For the first time, Kroll hesitated. Phones moved closer. The crowd was no longer just watching. They were bearing witness. And every second caught on camera was no longer evidence against Donovan. It was evidence against them. The sliding doors at the rear of the floor opened with a hiss as two uniformed Atlanta police officers stepped in, their radios crackling with chatter from dispatch. Officer Tanner, reading from handset. "Call came in reporting active theft, resisting detainment." Kroll took a half-step forward, shoulders squared like a man certain justice was already on his side. Kroll, projecting, "Officer, subject attempted to bypass fittings and conceal merchandise. He resisted search." Phones in the crowd shifted angles, now filming both the officers and the guards. Donovan, clearly for every camera, "I am a paying customer with a verified appointment. I have not been informed of any specific theft. I have not resisted. I have been asking for lawful procedure since first contact." Officer Tanner's gaze moved between Donovan, the guards, and the rows of recording phones. Officer Tanner, to Kroll, "Do you have item recovery? Witnesses? Alarm activation?" Marla, quickly, "Tag was found on his person." Donovan, "Produce the RFID gate log. It will show I triggered no alarm." Narration tightens. Officer Tanner's body cam flickered with a time code overlay. Incident number 25-1106-ATL-9287, 16:59:11. Every second was now evidence, just not the way Kroll expected. Officer Tanner, reluctantly. Sir, we need to place you in temporary restraints until we determine... Donovan. Then you will state your name and badge number clearly for the record. There was a pause. The kind of pause that happens when someone realizes they are stepping into something far larger than they were told. Still, Protocol 1. Officer Tanner. Officer Tanner. Badge 5124. He reached for the cuffs. Donovan didn't resist, didn't flinch. He simply lifted his voice just enough to carry across every live stream. Then write my name exactly as I dictate. The officer's hand froze mid-air. Phone zoomed in. Something had just shifted, and though no one knew what yet, everyone watching could feel it coming. The cold click of metal cuffs hovered inches from Donovan's wrist, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his head just enough for his voice to be captured on every phone in the room. Donovan, measured, commanding. Officer Tanner, I consent for you to retrieve my wallet only from my inside left jacket pocket. State for the record that you are doing so with my permission. The officer hesitated. Kroll's brow furrowed. Officer Tanner, carefully. For the record, subject has granted consent for property retrieval. Phones caught every syllable. Officer Tanner reached slowly into the inner pocket. He withdrew a dark leather wallet. Nothing flashy, simple, professional, worn at the edges, like it had seen courts and history. Donovan. Now open the first card slot. Face it toward the recording devices. Tanner flipped it open. The State Bar of Georgia ID glinted under the recessed lighting. Name, Donovan M. Price, Esquire. License number, GA942118. Classification, attorney at law. Active status. The murmurs across the floor didn't sound like gossip anymore. They sounded like realization. Marla, voice sharp, cracking. That doesn't change. Donovan, interrupting, voice now iron. It changes everything. You are detaining an officer of the court under false claims. Continue and your actions move from misconduct to criminal liability. Officer Tanner's posture shifted instinctively. The cuffs lowered an inch. Donovan, even louder, voice steady as steel. For the record, this detainment is now under active legal review. You will preserve every second of footage from Cam DFR 12 and Cam Atrium 07. Acknowledge. Officer Tanner, quietly into his body cam. Acknowledged. Something invisible broke in that moment. Not tension, control. Officer Tanner held the State Bar ID in his hand a moment longer, as if trying to reconcile the man before him with the narrative fed to him over dispatch. The badge of authority had changed hands, not physically but undeniably. Donovan, calm, unblinking. You are now obligated to verify identity through the Georgia Bar database. I will wait while you confirm active licensure. Kroll stepped forward, desperation edging his voice. Kroll, he's trying to scare you. Lawyers shoplift too. Donovan, turning slightly toward Kroll. And you just made your first actionable defamatory statement, on camera, with reckless disregard for truth. The crowd reacted, a low murmur that wasn't shock this time. It was recognition. Officer Tanner, into radio, steady. Dispatch run State Bar ID GA942118. Confirm active attorney status and any registered case history. Meanwhile, Donovan reached into the suit bag on the floor and retrieved a folded document. Donovan, this is a pre-filed emergency injunction. If you continue detainment without lawful cause, I will file it tonight under expedited judicial review. He handed it toward the officer. The document header was visible. In the Superior Court of Fulton County Civil Division, Price v. Sentinel Atlas, LLC and Brixton and Hale Holdings. Marla's face went pale. Officer Tanner, carefully to Kroll. Until we verify, we pause all further physical restraint. Kroll, stammering. You can't just... Donovan, voice now calm enough to cut. I can, and I already have. Narration tightens as phones zoom in on the injunction. In less than 60 seconds, the predator had become the defendant, and every person in that room knew. This wasn't a stop. It was the beginning of a legal reckoning. In a dimly lit newsroom just 6 miles from the store, Ria Delgado uploaded the viral clip to her monitor. The footage had already hit 58,000 views in under an hour. Comments were flooding in from users claiming this wasn't the first time. Ria's fingers flew across the keyboard as she opened a private newsroom archive. Ria, muttering, "Come on, show me something. Show me a pattern." She searched. Brixton and Hale complaint, profiling, detainment. 3 entries appeared instantly. 4th one appeared after she widened the date range. 5th appeared when she included the security vendor, Sentinel Atlas. Ria, reading aloud. Same guard. Same floor, same procedure. Always a black or brown customer. No arrests. No prosecutions. Her editor walked in, coffee in hand. Editor, tell me that look on your face is Pulitzers, not lawsuits. Ria, without turning. Look at this. Complaints filed under internal code. DF pattern risk. That's not retail loss prevention. That's a profiling matrix. She pulled up a redacted internal memo leaked anonymously 2 months prior. Sentinel Atlas Training Bulletin. Focus surveillance on high-loss demographics, indicators, hesitation at high-value displays, nervous behavior, excessive browsing. In the margin, handwritten note. Translation, black shoppers. Ria slammed her palm flat on the desk. Ria, they built a predictive model that labels skin tone as a loss metric. She clicked on a stored voice message from a former employee, anonymous caller, voice distorted. It's a quota. They call them LP saves. More stops equals more bonuses. They target people who won't fight back. Ria's jaw tightened. Ria, dialing. Donovan Price? You don't know me, but I think your case just became a class action. Narration rises. This was no isolated act. It was an algorithm of discrimination, and the system had just been caught. Ria's screen lit with another incoming email. This one from a confidential source inside Sentinel Atlas. Subject, you didn't get this from me. Attached were 3 files, an internal memo, a performance dashboard screenshot, and a spreadsheet labeled LP Saves Q4.xlsx. She opened the memo first. From Regional Director, Sentinel Atlas. 2. Loss Prevention Leads, Shrink Reduction Objectives. Locations must average 5 or more detainments per week to maintain bonus eligibility. Customer demographics demonstrating lower litigation risk should be prioritized for observation and preemptive stops. Ria read the last line twice. Ria, under her breath. They're not preventing theft. They're harvesting people. Next, she opened the spreadsheet. Rows of data populated the screen. One tab was highlighted in yellow. Tab name, Minority Capture Efficiency. Under it, black shoppers. 72% of detainments. Actual theft recovery resulting in charge, 1.6%. Ria dialing. Donovan, you might want to sit down. Donovan, voice calm. Tell me exactly what you found. Ria. They track detainments of minorities as a success metric. The spreadsheet calls it loss prevention yield. Their entire business model runs on false detentions of people who statistically won't sue. Silence. Not because Donovan was shocked, but because this was confirmation of what he had always known in the abstract, now quantified in cold, digital ink. She opened the final file. An email chain between LP executive leadership and Brixton and Hale corporate. Security vendor delivered outstanding Q3 performance. Detainments up 19%. Demographic alignment favorable. 87% non-litigious. Continue aggressive posture. Narration. Tight. It wasn't about theft. It was about metrics. A system designed to exploit silence had just targeted the one man who had built a career on breaking silence. Donovan. Low, precise. Rhea, send me everything. Tonight we file not just for violation. We file alleging profit-driven discrimination under color of corporate authority. The fight had just gone federal. Rhea forwarded the files. Donovan read them with silent precision. Each line a calculated blow, not to him, but to the corporate empire that thought it could profile, detain, and discard people like metrics on a spreadsheet. He opened the last attachment, a procurement contract between Brixton and Hale Holdings and Sentinel Atlas, LLC. There it was. A clause buried on page 14. Sentinel Atlas will be compensated based on quarterly shrink reduction performance. Shrink reduction is determined not by recovered merchandise value, but by the number of detainment actions reported and logged. Not merchandise recovered. Detainments. Each person stopped, even without cause, generated revenue. Donovan, calling Rhea. They aren't stopping theft. They are fabricating profit. Rhea. And it gets worse. Check page 17. He scrolled. Priority demographics include groups statistically less likely to pursue litigation, media escalation, or organized pushback. Next to the line was a highlighted footnote, citing a 2019 Sentinel internal study. Black and brown customers show significantly reduced legal engagement following detainment incidents. Donovan, voice turning razor sharp. They codified racial targeting into a financial model. On his second screen, another document blinked open. City lobbying disclosures. Sentinel Atlas had donated $220,000 in the last election cycle to Atlanta council members responsible for approving security contracts. Rhea, grim. This isn't just retail policy gone bad. This is a corporate political pipeline. Narration frames the truth like a verdict. It wasn't isolated. It wasn't accidental. It was profitable, and lawsuits weren't just retaliation, they were corrections. Donovan, quiet, resolute. Tomorrow, we file not just for violation of civil rights. We file for fraud, unjust enrichment, discriminatory contracting, and RICO violations. Because this was no longer about a fitting room. This was racketeering. Rhea's newsroom inbox began to fill at a rate she had never seen, not with press releases, but with stories, one after another. Subject lines like, "This happened to my son. I was humiliated there last year. They said I fit a profile." She clicked one. A video loaded, shaky footage of a black mother being blocked from the fitting rooms while holding a toddler. A guard stood in her way, saying she looked nervous. The comments under the video were filled with pain and resignation. Another email came in with the subject line, "They strip-searched me in a stockroom." It wasn't a headline. It was testimony. Rhea began pulling each one into a single file labeled Pattern Evidence, Sentinel/B and H. Rhea, dialing Donovan. "We're past discrimination. This is systemic abuse disguised as retail policy." Donovan, voice steady. "How many confirmed?" Rhea. 9 with documentation. Dozens more with video. Some go back 2 years, all with identical wording in the incident logs, unable to verify purchase intent. Narration weaves the truth like a net. Every isolated humiliation was part of a chain. Each link built profit. Each victim walked out with a scar no spreadsheet could quantify. Then came the breaking point. A major headline dropped online at 6:42 p.m. Atlanta retail giant accused of race-based detainments. Class action possible. Sentinel Atlas linked to discriminatory quotas, fraudulent detainments. The story exploded across platforms. Anchor, live broadcast opening. Tonight, explosive allegations that a national retailer may have orchestrated a systemic campaign targeting black shoppers, not for theft, but for profit. Narration crystallizes the transition. This was no longer Donovan's fight alone. It was now a fight for everyone who had been silenced, and the system was about to fight back. The news cycle didn't cool overnight, it intensified. By morning, a podium bearing the seal of Sentinel Atlas Security Union Local 118 stood in front of a wall of flags and uniformed guards. Reporters clustered in rows, cameras rolled. The spokesperson adjusted the microphone with finality. "Security officers are being targeted by a coordinated misinformation campaign," he declared, voice echoing with practiced outrage. "These lawsuits are not about justice. They are about dismantling the essential systems that protect retailers and customers across America." Behind him, a screen flickered to life, showing a still frame of Donovan mid-motion, captured at just the right angle to make it appear as if he was pulling away from Kroll. Freeze it at the wrong moment, and innocence becomes aggression. "These so-called civil rights claims endanger every officer who puts on a uniform," the spokesperson continued. "We cannot allow one radical attorney to undermine public safety for personal fame." Lower thirds rolled across news broadcasts. "Security union fights back against false allegations. Attorney accused of stoking division." Clips spread across social media, accompanied by commentary designed to provoke anger. "This guy just wants a payday. They're trying to cancel security workers." Emails began hitting Donovan's inbox. Message 1. "Drop the case, or we'll bury your reputation." Message 2. "You're a danger to law-abiding citizens." He read them without reaction, the glow from the screen reflecting in eyes that had seen this tactic before. Kroll's face appeared on one network interview, not in uniform now, but in a suit borrowed for damage control. "They're calling me racist," he said, voice wavering just enough to feel rehearsed. "I was protecting my store. Now my family's receiving threats." The goal wasn't truth, it was inversion. Turn oppressor into victim, turn justice seeker into destabilizer. Donovan powered off the screen. The smear phase had begun, exactly on schedule, and with it, the system unknowingly confirmed it had everything to lose. The first SUV appeared that night, a black Chevy Tahoe, engine idling at the far end of Donovan's driveway. Headlights off. No movement inside, just the faint shape of someone watching. It didn't drive off when he stepped outside. It waited. The next morning, a security camera notification pinged his phone. Someone had walked up to his mailbox at 3:12 a.m. and placed an unmarked envelope inside. No postage, just a single sheet of paper. "This doesn't end well for people like you." No signature, no logo, just the message. Later that day, his assistant forwarded an anonymous voicemail. Distorted voice. "We know where you live. We know where your sister works. Take the settlement when they offer it, or your life becomes a case nobody wins." Donovan saved the message to a folder, then a second folder, then an encrypted drive. He stepped outside that evening. The Tahoe was gone. A different vehicle had taken its place, a white cargo van this time. Same position, same silence. He spoke aloud, not to them, but to the unseen cameras he knew were watching. "Donovan, you have already lost. This is the panic phase. Panic means exposure." As he turned back toward the house, a glint caught his eye. A tiny black lens tucked beneath his license plate frame. He took a photo, zoomed in, captured the serial number. Front door opened softly behind him. Maya, voice shaking. "Donovan, should we be scared?" He didn't sugarcoat it. "Donovan, they want us to be. That's the tactic. But fear isn't our position. Truth is." He walked back inside, file in hand. Every threat they made, every camera lens they hid, was now just another piece of evidence, and they had delivered it directly to the plaintiff. By evening, the story had split the city in two. On one side, news commentators praising Donovan's courage, civil rights activists calling it a turning point in retail justice, and citizens holding signs outside Brixton and Hale reading, Dignity is not a luxury item. On the other, business coalitions warning that lawsuits like this would cripple economic stability, influencers framing Donovan as a professional victim, and anonymous accounts flooding social media with claims that the video was staged. Maya stood at the kitchen counter, scrolling through comments on her phone. Her hand trembled. Maya, they're saying you hate security workers, that you're doing this to get famous. Why are they lying like this? Donovan didn't look up from the files he was annotating. Donovan, because they still believe humiliation will make us retreat. She set the phone down, eyes glassy. Maya, what if it gets worse? What if this blows back on me, on our family? He finally looked at her, calm, centered, unshaken. Donovan, it already blew back. That's why it must end here. Narration flowed deeper. This wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. It was a line being drawn, not between him and the store, but between a community tired of silent suffering and a system built to exploit that silence. Outside, a group of neighbors gathered with candles. A local pastor spoke softly about protecting our own. A small child held a sign that read, "We stand with Donovan." Maya watched from the doorway. Maya, quietly. They're not afraid because you're wrong. They're afraid because you can win. Donovan closed the folder as if sealing a verdict. Donovan, tomorrow morning we stop reacting. We begin leading. Beyond the kitchen window, porch lights flickered on across the neighborhood, one by one, like beacons aligning. It was no longer a community divided. It was a movement choosing sides. The courtroom was silent before the judge entered, so silent that even the shuffle of papers echoed like distant thunder. Reporters filled every available seat along the back wall. Rows of citizens who had seen the video with their own eyes sat shoulder to shoulder, some holding notebooks, others clutching quiet anger. At the plaintiff's table, Donovan stood, not as a victim, not as a defendant, but as counsel of record. Bailiff's voice cut through the room. All rise! Judge Elaine Holloway stepped up to the bench, experienced, sharp-eyed, known for zero tolerance toward procedural games. Judge Holloway, this emergency hearing is now in session. Case number 25C, V-44192-Price versus Sentinel Atlas and Brixton and Hale Holdings. Counsel, state your appearances. Donovan, clear, unwavering. Donovan Price, plaintiff and lead counsel. Defense attorneys rose next, voices tight with polished confidence. But there was an edge beneath, like men who had prepared for policy arguments and found themselves facing an execution chamber. Judge, the court has received requests from multiple civil rights organizations to observe these proceedings. Due to public interest, I am allowing live broadcast. All statements made today will be part of the permanent record. A low hum filled the courtroom, cameras locked in. The judge looked directly at the defense. Judge, Mr. Price alleges unlawful detainment, racial discrimination, evidence fabrication, and profit-driven targeting. The court will now review Exhibits A through G. Donovan stepped forward. Donovan, we begin not with my testimony, but with theirs. He nodded to the technician. Screens flickered to life. Narration sets the pivot. The footage that ignited a movement was about to become evidence in a court of law. There would be no more debates, no more spin. What the nation had watched in outrage, the system would now watch under oath. The first video played. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the monitor illuminated every face. Judge, attorneys, witnesses, citizens. The footage showed Kroll stepping into Donovan's path. Kroll, on video, "You don't belong past this point." The room reacted, not loud but visceral. A collective shift, a breath held. The video cut to the moment Kroll grabbed Donovan's arm. Video audio. State your authority for detainment. Overlapping angles appeared, store CCTV, body cam, and 2 different cell phones, all synchronized. No resistance, no theft, just targeted escalation. Donovan, in courtroom, addressing the judge. Multiple sources. Multiple angles. Not one confirms any alarm trigger, concealment, or probable cause. The screen transitioned to internal email exhibits. From Sentinel Atlas V, P of Operations. Subject, Detainment Metrics Q3. Demographic focus, maximize LP saves in non-litigious consumer groups. Defense attorney, these are taken out of context. Judge Holloway, interrupting. Counsel, the language is explicit. Sit down. Next came the spreadsheet. Rows of data. Highlighted columns. Detainment numbers tied directly to bonuses. Donovan, Your Honor, this is not loss prevention. It is a revenue model built on racial profiling. A murmur broke through the gallery. A woman in the third row wiped tears from her eyes. Finally, Donovan introduced the witness testimonies. Short, devastating clips. I was 9 months pregnant when security made me strip in a stockroom. They said I couldn't afford the suit I was trying on. They told me to prove I had money before I could touch anything. Their voices filled the courtroom. Donovan, this is not perception. This is pattern. Every incident recorded, every life humiliated, built into corporate profit projections. He paused, letting the silence become part of the evidence. There was no cross-examination, only reckoning. The final video faded from the screens. The courtroom remained frozen, as though time itself refused to move until someone spoke. Judge Holloway adjusted her glasses and looked to the defense table. Judge Holloway, in light of the evidence presented, I find probable cause for immediate injunctive relief. Sentinel Atlas is hereby ordered to suspend all detainment operations within the state pending full investigation. Gasps broke out. Flashbulbs fired from the press pit like lightning. The lead defense attorney scrambled to his feet. Defense attorney, Your Honor, such an order would cripple operations statewide. Judge cutting him off. Perhaps you should have considered that before allowing profit incentives to dictate who was worthy of dignity. Across the gallery, the Brixton Hale corporate representative buried his face in his hands. A second attorney leaned over to him, urgently whispering, We need to discuss executive resignation, now. The judge turned toward Donovan. Judge, Mr. Price, do you intend to pursue damages? Donovan spoke without triumph, only clarity. Donovan, I intend to pursue every victim who was silenced by this system. This case is not about one unlawful detainment. It is about an enterprise built on targeted harm. The judge nodded solemnly. Judge, then this court acknowledges potential for class action certification. A ripple of astonishment swept through the room. In the front row, a woman whose video testimony had brought the gallery to tears clasped her hands to her mouth as relief swept over her. One of the executives stood abruptly and walked out, cameras catching his face as he passed. News alert flashed across screens live. Sentinel Atlas CEO in emergency meeting after court halts operations. The system had drawn its last breath of denial. Now, accountability had entered the building. Within 48 hours of the ruling, storefronts across the state began removing the Sentinel Atlas logo from their entryways. What had once been marketed as premium protection was now synonymous with exploitation. Corporate press releases tried to sound composed. They didn't. Brixton Hale official statement. Effective immediately, we are suspending our partnership with Sentinel Atlas and initiating an internal audit of all detainment procedures. But the change didn't end with an apology. Inside every fitting room, a new sign was installed. Your rights matter. If you believe you are being profiled or unlawfully detained, scan this QR code to file an immediate civil claim reviewed by an independent oversight panel. Cases are protected under whistleblower statute. Cameras flashed as the first independent monitors, community-appointed, not corporate-paid, walked the retail floors with clipboards in hand. News anchor. Live broadcast. In a landmark shift, the State Attorney General has announced the creation of a Retail Civil Rights Enforcement Unit. This unit will investigate patterns of discrimination and impose automatic penalties. At the courthouse, policy proposals were introduced, requiring all detainment incidents to trigger automatic legal review, not internal retail processing. Journalist Ria Delgado, in segment. This case has rewritten how retail accountability is handled. Future cases will start from the assumption that every customer is a protected individual, not a potential liability. Narration captures the movement. What began as a confrontation at a velvet rope had become legislation. Where once humiliation was a private shame, now it was public evidence. And for the first time, the system didn't just apologize, it reformed. The applause in the hall was soft, reverent, not the roar of a crowd, but the heartbeat of a community. Nurses in white uniforms filled the auditorium as Maya Price stood on stage, hands trembling slightly as the silver pin was placed just above her heart. Her eyes found Donovan in the crowd. He stood, not as an attorney, not as a public figure, but as her brother. The gold bracelet, their mother's bracelet, rested on her wrist, clasp newly repaired, catching the light like a promise fulfilled. After the ceremony, she stepped down from the stage and walked into Donovan's waiting arms. Maya, voice barely above a whisper. "You kept your word." Donovan, soft. "We kept hers." They stepped outside into the cool evening air. No reporters, no cameras, just silence, the kind that feels like healing instead of threat. Narration settles gently. For the first time in days, there was no urgency in his pulse. The legal briefs were closed. The courtrooms were behind him. In this moment, justice wasn't a ruling or a headline. It was peace, the kind their mother wanted for them, the kind people forget is possible when dignity is restored. Maya looked out over the parking lot, lights reflecting off the wet pavement. Maya, "Do you think it's really over?" Donovan exhaled slowly. Donovan, "No. But it's finally beginning in the right direction, and for the first time since the fitting room, he allowed himself to breathe." Later that night, Donovan sat alone in his office, lights dimmed, city skyline stretching beyond the window like a quiet witness. His phone buzzed once, an email notification. Subject, "This happened to me too." I never spoke up. Until now. No name attached. No details. Just courage taking its first breath. He opened his laptop and began typing, not as a lawyer issuing orders, but as a man sharing truth. Donovan, voice steady, speaking into recorded statement. "They built systems to make you feel small, to make you question your worth, to make you believe silence is safety." He lifted his eyes, gaze locking into the camera, into every viewer watching, every person who had ever walked into a store and felt unwelcome in their own skin. Donovan, but the moment you speak, the moment you refuse to shrink, the system has to answer for itself. Justice isn't a courtroom. It's a decision. And it starts when one person decides enough is enough. Narration rises with quiet power. This wasn't just the end of a case. It was the beginning of a movement, recorded, witnessed, and carried forward by every person who had ever lowered their eyes in silence. Donovan, final line, direct CTA. If you've lived this, if you've seen this, or if you believe accountability must be real, not performative, share your voice below. Tell your story. Say what justice should look like where you live. Because the next case that ends this for good might start with you. And with that, he clicked publish.